ISO FileMaker Magazine, the professional's resource for FileMaker know-how.
Hey there, this is Matt Petrowski bringing you these FileMaker tutorials from my website, FileMakerMagazine.com, which may be called Claris Magazine? Probably not, I'll get a different name. But what we are taking a look at in this video is how do you troubleshoot FileMaker when you're having issues? Either whether you're trying to learn something or you're trying to fix a problem, that's what we're going to cover in this video. All right, so how do you troubleshoot a problem? Well, typically you're going to be searching the web. That's obvious and that's a given. What do I use? Well, I'll show you, and I guess a little promotion. It's actually something I created for myself. I am going to go to a website called FileMakerSearch.com. It's a website I created for myself, and what this is it's a custom Google search engine. Now, I'll show you how I searched Google before I created this for myself, but this basically just makes it really easy for me to find things. We're going to take a look at the places where in FileMaker you can find things. Basically, it just comes down to your in FileMaker, which I just switched to, and you're up at the Help menu, and FileMaker is going to have their links to all of the different resources. Most importantly, the Claris community. This is where you're going to find a lot of answers to a lot of problems, but listed in this is not going to be other places such as forums. There is a Facebook group, although Facebook isn't really searchable. There is Reddit, where a lot of people will post questions and answers. There's also Stack Overflow, which has a lot of content. So knowing that these sources were out there, what I did for myself was creating this search engine of FileMaker Search. What you're going to see is over on the side here, I've got different breakdowns, or I've actually listed what sites I'm actually searching. In fact, if I'm missing a FileMaker site that you think is valuable for searching, then please, you can email it to me. I think down at the very bottom. Yes, there we go, right there. I have a link down at the very bottom, and it's basically just sending an email to me at the magazine website to add a particular site to this search engine. Now, again, Google is really powerful. We can always go over to Google. I'll create a new tab. We'll go to google.com. And then let's say I want to know what FileMaker's server requirements are. Now, Google's going to get pretty good at this. FileMaker, if we put in FileMaker 19 server requirements, you can see right there that Google is already coming up with a suggested search in terms of, let's say something is not working correctly with your FileMaker server 19 install. Well, you can select this and it will come up with pretty much the #1 hit that we have right here. Claris FileMaker 19.0 to 19.3 technical specifications. That's going to tell you what the requirements are. So great, Google. But using FileMaker Search, I'm able to filter down just to specific areas, and it also searches things much quicker. Also, I made it so that the links on the side are clickable if you want to go directly to support@claris.com. So if I click this, it'll open a new tab for me, and I can go search this site directly using its search engine. So I'm on the Claris website, clearly, and I can put in, let's say we're looking for server 19 requirements. Now, sometimes the Claris search engine will take a little bit of time. There it wasn't too long, but we got our link right there, best practices for upgrading to FileMaker Server 19. Their #1 hit was server requirements for FileMaker 18, even though I searched for FileMaker 19. But if we go over to FileMaker Search, what you're going to see is if I put in the same search criteria, server 19 requirements, or spell it right, and hit that, Google's going to be almost instant. Now, just like I have listed over here on the side where I've got official, forums, and consultancies, these are broken down into, I forget what the Google search engine calls it. Who knows? It's right here. So if I want to limit my search to just those specific things, so for example, if I click on official, we can see right here that the all results, this custom search engine is giving me the exact same thing that just searching Google did, but I can limit it just to that particular site. So by clicking on official, I limit the number of results because I'm using Google to only search the official Claris channels, which I don't believe I included community. In fact, community is within forums. In fact, if you have suggestions, feel free to leave a comment down below of how you search for things in the world of FileMaker. But if I do a forums, you can see right there, it basically takes my server requirements, and I've now moved off of the official by switching it to forums, and now I'm limiting it to a more narrow set of results. So here is a post that Claris probably made on the Claris community, and that's something even, you go to the official, you can see it's got 19.0 and 19.3, but we go to their forums, it looks like Claris themselves actually posted something about 19.4 and 19.5. You'll also get answers, all kinds of different things. Now you can see that this extends to more than just the official. I'm also searching consultancies and blogs. So let's take an example where there are things that are put out by a lot of FileMaker developers. In fact, finding these nuggets is just wonderful. You want to be able to find things that you remember hearing about, but you didn't need it right then. For example, Daniel over at Wheatbix, awesome FileMaker developer, and he released an article about JSON. So what I'm able to do is simply use FileMaker search right here, and JSON, I can put in a JSON record, and I can go to consultancies, and we get a bunch of different things here. There it is, actually, right there, number 4. I can see it. We're going to take a look at how I would actually go search their specific site, because I knew that Daniel had released the article at Team DF, and that's in my custom search engine. But we can see right here that JSON comes up. If I have any questions about JSONs, I'm searching app.works, Soliant Consulting, Codance is in here, Proofgeist, all of the really big companies that have a lot of FileMaker developers. It's just an easy way for me to search all of their blogs using this, or searching the consultancies. Now, when it comes to blogs, I can actually just limit this to the blogs, and I'm going to FileMaker hacks, so forth. Now, if you are a prolific, if you're a consultancy and you're a prolific blogger, meaning you blog, pretty frequently, then I can move you from the consultancies to the blogs, what have you. Also, there's forums outside of the community of the Claris forums where you can search FM forums and if we scroll down, we can see what I'm searching for forums. There it is right there. FileMaker, the Claris community, FileMaker Today, FM forums, Reddit, and Stack Overflow. So now that we've talked about FileMaker search and how it's got these, I wish I remembered the word for what they call these things in a custom search engine, but I set it up a little while ago. I've just been using this privately for myself. I just now made it public, putting it on the domain FileMakerSearch.com. What I want to do is, if I know that there is a particular article at a particular site, then I want to be able to search that specific site. So let's take a look at how we can do that using Google itself. Not going through the FileMaker. We could go through the FileMaker search, but I know that there is at Beeswax. Vince Minato released an article about Perform Script on Server, and I haven't been doing a whole lot of Perform Script on Server scripting, but I know that I should, and he had some files and things that were really probably going to be useful. So let's take a look at how I would go about that. Okay, so you remember that article, you know that Beeswax did it, or maybe you don't. If you don't remember who did it, you can just put in here, just search in and go PSOS, and actually just use FileMaker search. I can put in here, let's put Vince. I remember his first name. And let's see, we've got Dig FM going back to FileMaker 16 and things like that. Well, let's say I now concede, is there a Beeswax right here? There's 100 times faster flight testing, Beeswax. Okay, I know that it's Beeswax. This search engine is searching for PSOS, and look at that, going back to 2014. Key thing, in the world of FileMaker and any other development environment, code, once it's good and solid, it still works. It doesn't become irrelevant. There is stuff that was created in 2010, 2012 that's just as relevant in FileMaker as it is today. The trick is knowing what might be a replacement or a more modern method if Claris has released a better way to do something. So let's go search the site directly. So I know that it's at Beeswax, so I'm going to click Beeswax. That's going to open an additional link for me. And when this comes up, you have to know how to use Google's search operators. And if you haven't actually used them, let me create a new tab and let's put in a search for Google search operators. Operators. Right there. So that's what we're looking for right there, Google search operators. And we can see right here, we've got the number one hit for this is not a Google link, but here's just a blog link of 42 advanced operators. I highly suggest, as a developer, if you are not familiar with using the search operators, at least the site and in URL operators, then you absolutely need to give yourself 30 minutes, an hour, whatever it takes to go through a couple articles and learn how to use these, because it allows you to find exactly what you want on any site, provided they didn't take it off of the internet. And let's just take a look at this, what he has here in terms of what he's going to list. Wow, he's giving you a lot of them. Ors, ands, etc. All of our operators that we're used to as a development. Let's see if he's got the site in here. Site operator, there we go. That's what we're looking for right there. This particular operator, site colon, is so easy that once you're on the site, you simply just limit what you're looking for. So since we had brought up that Beeswax web page, and the FileMaker search just took me right directly to the root URL of beeswax.net. In fact, if you click on one of these and it doesn't actually resolve, it might be that that website either does not have a redirect to www, so you would just need to add the www and go ahead and let that site know. But on the site itself, here on Beeswax, what I'm going to do is now I'm just going to select in the search bar that we have right here, and I'm going to limit my search specifically to this site looking for PSOS. Now, this is how going beyond Google search engine or beyond the FileMakerSearch.com, which is already limiting them, I am now searching this specific site. And I can put in PSOS, and all I have to do is put in the site qualifier of site colon. So you can see what I did is I went into the URL, I stripped off the URL scheme, and I'm now searching for PSOS in the site directly. Now, if I remember that Vince actually did that, I could put the word Vince right here. Any additional qualifier that might help me find my target quicker is something that you want to use. So let's do this. Look at that. That is absolutely wonderful. I only have 9 items to go through here to find that exact article that Vince had done about PSOS. In fact, here's just a list of them. His article from 2014, an article from 2015, etc. And beyond that, what you're able to do is once you find out how a particular site likes to identify things, you can then get even more specific. So if I hold down the Command key and click to open this tab, I can see that right here, because of the software that they're using, I can limit my search even further. Well, that actually did that. I wanted to highlight. Sometimes highlighting doesn't work on this. You have to select outside of the area. Let's see if I can get this. Well, we're going to use the good method of using the inspect element. If a website doesn't let you copy something, just use your developer tools and go in and say, no, I'm going to get exactly what I want. So there we go. I can copy his name. So I use the developer tools to get that. And I can go back to my search right here of what Google did, and I can put in here a literal string. So this will probably find the same results, but it's just, I've got to provide you with all the information possible for you to use any piece of clue that you want. This works for the Claris community website. If you want to find something on the Claris community that has its own search engine, but Google and its index and its searching is usually faster and better. So if I find out a particular user's name on the community website and they are commonly posting about certain things, I'm going to use the FileMaker keyword, whether it's a function, get layout object attribute, and then put the author name in there. So this we'll probably do, oh, we've got, let's put in and 32 results. So it actually made the results a little bit wider by putting in the literal string of what their software puts as the author. And I'm saying PSOS and Vince, and we can see, I guess that makes sense. It should, because this is going to have, his author page on the Beeswax website talking about, I've talked about FileMaker perform script on server. So how do you find out about particular acronyms that maybe FileMaker uses or things that you're not familiar with? Well, that's going to be a matter of putting the string that you are familiar with, but also using the FileMaker documentation. Okay, so you are learning FileMaker, and there are terms that you don't know about that the community uses, like TOG, T-O-G, for Table Occurrence Group, or PSOS for Perform Script on Server, or GTRR for Go To Related Record. You don't know about these acronyms that we use in the development community, or you're becoming familiar with them, and you just want to learn how to do something. The first place to go when you're inside FileMaker and you're wanting to learn something, as FileMaker tells me that there's an update. Yes, I'm still on 9.4. The first place that you typically go to is going to be the help menu, as we talked about, and you're going to go to the FileMaker Pro help. It's the number one thing that you're going to. Now, in days past, FileMaker shipped with documentation that was local to your machine. These days, everything is on the internet, so when we do this, it's just going to open a tab, and it's going to open up into a URL. Now, you are able to download the documentation and have that locally on your machine. If we go down to product documentation, and you can download it right here. So you can see right there from the FileMaker documentation on the web, you can go to the product documentation. That will take you to a page where you typically can download things. So the one thing that I suggest that you do is, if you're getting into FileMaker development, find as many of the current PDFs, white papers, or what have you, put them into a folder on your hard drive, and then use your local OS ability to search within that specific folder. That's where you get extreme technical documentation. For example, if you are trying to learn FileMaker's execute SQL, Claris has this SQL reference right here, or this ODBC JDBC guide. You select on these things. There's the PDF. You're going to download this. However, this is the Macintosh download right here, but you're going to take this PDF, you're going to download this onto your computer, and like I said, put all of these into a folder. You're then going to use the operating system's search feature in order to do that. I don't have a Finder window open, but in the Finder, in Macintosh, you basically just go up into the search up in the top area, just like we have our URL bar right here. Maybe I'll show that, and search all of these PDFs. So that's a great way to get access to the technical documentation specific to specific features after you've downloaded the documentation. But what about searching the documentation? Well, we can see right here that the documentation itself has its own search. And for the most part, this works really, really good. The trick here is FileMaker Claris has all of the versions of FileMaker that are on the web, but the most current version typically does not have the version number in the URL. It's just whatever is the current release. So if they go to Claris version 20, because I think they're dropping FileMaker at FileMaker 19, you can't always find it using the trick that's going to be coming up with regards to searching within a URL. So if you know that Claris has released a particular version and you want to search that version's documentation, and let's say you hadn't searched it, let's say there was FileMaker 7, you're working with FileMaker 17 and you want to look at that documentation. Most of the documentation carries forward. In other words, most of the functions, when we look at our function reference right here in this FileMaker 19 documentation, they will tell you whether or not it was released at a certain version. When I go to the length right here and I look at this and scroll down, I can see this originated in. So all of the functions in the FileMaker documentation, they tell you when something was released. And if you're using FileMaker 18 and it says it was released in FileMaker 19, let's actually just go back and we can find something in here. Also, remember that your browser has a search feature. Don't hunt and peck for things if you have any idea about a particular feature. For example, going to the functions reference right here, and I remember there were beacons. They released the near field stuff in FileMaker Go. I happen to remember that they call it region, but I don't know what the rest of it is. Well, I'm going to do a Command or Control F right in the browser, and I'm going to simply put my search right in here. And I'm going to put region, and there we go. I get one match. So not only are you going to search Google or use FileMaker Search in order to search the web, once you get on the page, you're going to use the browser's search ability to search directly within that. There is no point in going to that. And it was hidden right there behind my head, but there it is. Get region monitor events. So I remembered beacon region. You had to be within a region. I remembered the keyword. I search within the browser and I find exactly what I'm looking for right there. And of course, I can then see, okay, I'm in FileMaker 18. This is working in FileMaker 16. I'm totally good. I can use this particular function. But getting back to those Google search operators, the second one that I'm going to introduce you to is in URL. So we can see that right here. Let's just go to a regular Google search because I'm used to it. If I simply just put site claris.com, which will get community.claris.com. It'll also get help.claris.com. If I wanted to limit it to just help, I would put in help.claris.com. If I then use the in URL search operator, this right here allows you to look at a particular pattern or look in a URL if you've seen the pattern that a particular provider uses. Now, I know that Claris and older versions of FileMaker would put the version number in the URL. Like I said, for the current version, at least as of the shooting of this video, 19, they just have it as current. So 19 isn't in the URL. But if I do this search right here, and it didn't get help, maybe it's probably support. They changed it at one point, support.claris.com. There we go. We get 70. So now we get our service requirements, etc. I can now filter this down to whatever I'm looking for about this particular function. And let's say I remember layout attribute, and we didn't find the get layout attribute. Oh, there it is right there. Interesting that it's in the release notes. But at least I got the clue that I could now copy this if I wanted to, and I could just widen this out. It may be that they moved support at the point in time, but this is how I would usually go search for a particular function. Is I would, and it might not be at support.com. Let's just put it at claris.com and see what happens. See what we come up with. In URL, format change. Well, regardless, you can see that we're coming up with a very small number of results. In other words, we're not getting overwhelmed by the massive amount of results that Google can return because we are intentionally restricting those results. And of course, you can go more narrow by taking things off. As I cut that, we can see right there, I was on the wrong domain. So that was the issue right there. It wasn't at support. It was at fmhelp.filemaker.com. Which brings me back to FileMaker Search. You can see that FileMaker Search is actually searching fmhelp.filemaker.com. So truly, if I wanted to find this easier, I would have just done this. Layout attribute in URL 18. And that would come up with the result right there. Number one, if I wanted to intentionally limit it, I would click on official, and then I'm there. I'm instantly there. Now, why I would want to search for the in URL, the get layout object attribute specific to FileMaker 18 documentation, I could use the FileMaker 19 documentation, but of course, if something was going on and I wanted to compare one version release versus another to see if FileMaker changed how the function worked, which they've done it for maybe in the history of my many years with FileMaker, I think they've done it on maybe a handful, 4 or 5 functions where they've changed the name or changed the result of that particular function. But for the most part, everything tends to stay pretty consistent throughout the course of FileMaker's history. But this is the process that I use in order to troubleshoot and find things. There's a few key areas that you can't actually search within this. Say, for example, if I wanted to search Reddit, I would go over to Reddit directly and then search within this site specifically. We can see right there, there's XML. Let's say I am doing something XML. We'll go in. Let's take this off. Basically, all I do is I select right in front of the domain, strip it, and I'm going to say XML. I want you to limit to that site. I don't know if it's going to apply just to FileMaker, but it may. Integration. Interesting. Well, long story short, this is the way that you troubleshoot and hunt for things in Google. You use these limiting operators, you use FileMaker search, and you use the help and PDFs as your resources using your OS to search to find your answer or the fix to your problem in a much quicker fashion. And this is how I go about it. Okay, so let's do something even a little bit more advanced and a little bit more geeky. Now, in the rest of the development world, there is a website that it was the pioneer, and they pretty much, set up open source movement. Well, I mean, open source was happening well before GitHub existed. In fact, before Git, there was Bazaar, and then CVS, concurrent version control, which was the first thing that I learned when it came to software development. Oh, that's a long time ago. But GitHub, as the Web 2.0 came out about, is where people put collections of code. Now, over here on FileMaker Search, as we scroll down, there is a section right here called Code. Now, there are people that have developed really useful custom functions. In fact, if we go to the Brian Dunning website, this is one of the most popular, or was one of the most popular websites, but Brian Dunning, he got out of FileMaker, started doing some other stuff, but he kept this site up, and people keep using this site as a place. There was another website called FM Functions, but I think it hasn't been resolving for quite some time. Let's say you are looking for a particular function that's going to help you deal with XML or SQL. You just come in here, you search for XML. Of course, you can limit that within FileMaker search. So if you have the name of a function, if you put in XML right here, we search for that, we click on code. We are now limiting that specifically to Brian Dunning's website, searching for custom functions. This is just an alternate to Brian Dunning's website, but it is also going to be searching other locations. For example, GitHub. Now, Jeremy Bonte, he created a fork of a repo that I started on FM standards. I should put FM standards in the search engine here, which I haven't done it yet. But GitHub is a place where you can also search for some FileMaker code. Now, there's not going to be a whole lot of it because there aren't a lot of FileMaker developers that actually release code on GitHub, but that reminds me, let me bring up, I'm in the process, actually, as of the shooting of FileMaker standards right there. I'm in the process of actually migrating the FileMaker Standards website. And on the FileMaker Standard website, there is a new one, which currently, as of recording this video, I'm at the subdomain of dev, but this will probably redirect, if you're watching this video later, to just the root URL of FileMaker Standards. On there, I have a collection. This is sort of like my where I keep all of my thoughts about development and so forth. I'm working with other people, other really well-known developers who also make contributions to this. But if you go to the repositories area on this website, you will see a list of repositories, which are places on GitHub where FileMaker code exists. So here are some custom function libraries, and I should add these to the search engine. The FileMaker techniques from Jeremy Bonte. Charles Ross had a collection of custom functions. Alan Ulbricht, I think I've worked with him a little bit over at iSolutions. He has some custom functions. Again, if you have something that you'd like to be listed, you can put that on the comment down below the YouTube video or send it to me directly using the link over at FileMaker Search or editor@FileMakerMagazine.com. But all of these repos are sprinkled all over the place. And what I'm going to show you now is how can you search GitHub for something that's FileMaker specific? Well, we simply go over to GitHub and it has the search right here. Now, all we have to know is that if we search for something specific to FileMaker, GitHub will be able to find it across all of its repositories, the public ones, not the private ones, for a particular thing. So let's go use FileMaker. Let's go use FileMaker's search engine here, and we know that we want execute SQL. That's a function right there. We can see that execute SQL, and it's bringing up the FileMaker 16 docs. Well, I'm just going to highlight execute SQL. I'm going to go over to GitHub. I'm going to use its search, put in execute SQL, and search all of GitHub. Now, execute SQL may be a term that is specific to other languages, but we can see right here, it comes up with code repositories first off. Well, if we select on code, and let's get something actually a little bit more interesting. Execute SQL is a word that's going to be used in a lot of other places. We can see there's an execute SQL right there, Soliant Mike. So Mike, who works over at Soliant. But here we can see this is just a keyword that's included into this particular person's repo, and they're actually a C# developer. So we're not interested in that. This works really better with keywords that are specific to FileMaker. You can put in the keyword of FileMaker with this. Let's see what it does. You can always narrow your search to qualify things. Here we can see FileMaker execute. Here is something that's listed as HTML. Here's a scratch pad. It does deal with FileMaker and execute SQL. If we select on code, I'd have to be logged in order to see this, but when you are logged in, selecting on code looks at all of the code in all of the repositories. So while I don't have it right now and I'm not going to load it up, one of the searches that I did here prior to shooting the video is get layout object. If I do for that, no sense in doing the whole thing, just highlight right there, go over to GitHub. Let's go back a tab and let's actually just put in that obscure FileMaker or specific to FileMaker, what have you. Well, what happens is when you are logged in, this question mark actually becomes a listing of all of the repositories that include this particular snippet or this particular piece of code. So if you are adventurous and you're over at the Brian Dunning website and you have looked at a particular function, and that particular function, you can see right here, Bruce Robertson has some really weird looking code. What is he doing here with this? He's got the position right here. I want to know how the position function is being used. If I copy this, then go over to GitHub and then do a search for position with the parenthesis, remember that it will, if a developer chooses to use the position function with or without the space in between that, you can modify that. There's also the space afterwards. Nope. There we go. So you can search for position with the space, without the space. Just modify your search criteria, hunting for what you're looking for. You would be able to find in GitHub, provided I was logged in, everywhere where the position function exists. But remember, again, position is such a common word that it's going to find across all kinds of different repositories. But if you qualify that with, and you may need to escape that, I don't know what it would do because I'm not going to get any code right now. You may need to qualify that. Let's see what it comes. There we've got 3 commits. Code is not going to list because I'm not currently logged in, but if I was logged in, it would show me all of the repositories that include the word position with an opening parentheses, which would be the start of a position function. And I've qualified that with the word FileMaker, which hopefully the word FileMaker exists either in their comments or in their README documentation for the repository. So this is just yet another way that you can use a search engine on a site that's out there that maintains a collection of other resources, in this case, repositories of FileMaker code. And of course, if we go over here to the repositories, at the bottom here, I have a listing of Repo Collections. These companies tend to put out, they have a lot of collections. They have all of their repositories in a collection of code. Proofgeist, formerly Geist Interactive, Soliant Consulting, Beeswax, Dan Smith has a good collection. Of course, if it was just specific to functions, I listed it up here, FileMaker Technique functions. If you have a GitHub repo and you would like it to be added either to the repositories on the FileMaker Standards website, or you have a website that you would like to have added that is a FileMaker specific website, like I mentioned, scroll down to the bottom, click on the email us, and I will do my best to add that to this search engine for being able to help the community find things in a easier fashion when you're trying to troubleshoot your FileMaker problems. And before I leave you, there is some hidden walled gardens of questions and answers. One of those in particular is Facebook. Facebook has a very large community in it. I am an administrator on it. And you're able to search for things there. I think if we go to, from here, if we went to facebook.com and we put in FileMaker, let's see if it comes up with anything. Nope, that comes up with somebody actually registered the personal URL of FileMaker. But I believe if you put groups, FileMaker, let's see. I'll have to log into Facebook and I'll go find it and I'll get back to you 1 second. All right, sorry about that, and I can't believe I forgot what it was, but it's so long ago that I actually took over the admin of it. But it is this URL, facebook.com/groups/FileMaker-devs. Now, as you can see, I am logged in. I am not logged in on this incognito browser, and it really doesn't say a whole lot. We can click on discussion, but you can see that it's a private group. If you have a Facebook account, which as I switch to this window, we can see I'm now logged in. You can see that it has 4.9 members. Of course, probably half of those are spam bot accounts and sort of worthless, but with our little search feature here on Facebook, we are able to search this particular group looking for all kinds of different things. So let's say, for example, I'm looking for curl API. Somebody has asked that particular question. And this is where you're going to be able to see whether people have replied to that and then pointed people to outside resources. Of course, you can use the same search over here on FileMaker Search and just do curl API. You're going to find stuff within the Claris community right there, super quick. Find all kinds of responses. I tend to go to FileMaker Search. I rarely tend to log into Facebook just because it's a walled garden and it's a bit hidden. But if you have a web browser and you leave Facebook logged in, then it is yet another place that you can search for answers to questions that people have probably already asked. And if you get really good at this, to be honest, just like developers that don't even really develop, they just basically go get stuff from Stack Overflow, put it in, modify, get stuff from Reddit, put it in, modify. That is how you build applications these days. There is a lot of code that already exists that you don't need to come up with. You just need to be able to find it and being able to search for whether you're finding code to build your solution or whether you're finding code to fix a problem. Knowing how to troubleshoot and using these tools it's absolutely necessary if you're going to be a very quick, efficient FileMaker developer. So as always, I hope this information has helped you out. And until next time, much luck and happy FileMaking.
We hope you've enjoyed this video tutorial, and we'd like to say thank you for your subscription and your support. If you're not already a subscriber, head on over to www.filemakermagazine.com/subscribe for more information about the benefits of joining.